6 o'clock on the 13th, next Wednesday. It's an opportunity for all of our community allied partners to, which include the city, the county, the school district, and the chamber, to present kind of an overview of current projects, activities, plans for 2022. And I think most importantly, how each partner member organization can work closer together on behalf of and for the benefit of the community. We have about 75 in reservations as we speak. I know the city has 2 tables purchased, and hope each and every one of you can make plans to be there if your schedule allows. This program, I think, deserves twice that many, and we'll get late registrations and hopefully have a good 100+ gathering on the 14th of October. You know, it's a big deal where we have over 100 committed volunteers for the 2021 Christmas parade. But you know, it's a bigger deal than it's ever been, hopefully bigger and better, because we need twice that many volunteers. As you know, the chamber leads through the contract for services with the city, management and hosting of the Christmas parade. And we have plans for a tremendous gathering on the 20th of November on that Saturday afternoon. Have 4 new stations, entertainment stations along the parade route, beginning over on West Jackson and having one on the square, which will provide more family entertainment and sponsorship opportunities to get more and more food truck vendors and other individuals, families together for what would be a really special occasion. So we're very much looking forward to that opportunity. The first session of Ozark Leads was held last Friday. We have 12 class participants in class 6. Had a wonderful team building exercise on full day Friday, and have some engaged future leaders for the community of Ozark, and very excited to what this leadership development opportunity over the next 8 months will provide these business and professional organization representatives. The chamber, in conjunction with the school district and the city, is participating in the red carpet welcome for not only new teachers in the school district, but also new administrators and all employees who are new to the district in 2021. That's a November 2 event. If your schedule allows, we would certainly appreciate seeing you participate in that event and recognize and thank administrators as well as instructors in the Ozark Public School District for the good work they do for the community. That's a lunch event, Bruce. Yes, sir. The chamber is hosting a ribbon cutting for Charlene Health and Neurology on Thursday this week at noon, and our ambassadors obviously will be in attendance. A very exciting ribbon cutting for the chamber and for the community is scheduled for that same evening with Finley Farms. Big event, major concert attraction, as well as a wonderful gathering for the community in what is to be a tremendous project for not just Ozark, Missouri, but for the region as a whole. Speaking of that, the Good Afternoon Ozark session of October 28th, we're bringing Tracy Kimberling, who is the CEO of the Springfield Convention and the Visitors Bureau, who thinks regionally and sees not only the Finley Farms project as a wonderful new opportunity for Ozark, but for the region as a whole. And he's going to present a program at GAO on the 28th of October, 11:30 to 1, on the impact of tourism development and promotion. That may be a program and a presentation that you'd find a lot of interest in, and hopefully your schedule allow your involvement and attendance. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we'll move right along to first reading of bills and resolutions. Mr. Campbell, you're up first. Motion was made by Alderman Campbell, seconded by Alderman Poston, and placed bill number 3301 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An amended ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Ozark, Missouri, section 215, 2210, possession, sale, and discharge of fireworks.
All right, Mr. Campbell, it's your bill. Would you like to discuss it? All right.
At the last Board of Alderman meeting, there was a motion made by Alderman Gardner that passed that amended the proposed language. I'll walk you through the changes to that language. In section A1, the language was amended to address only July 4th, and the time frame was extended to 12 p.m. or midnight. So it's 9 a.m. just to allow fireworks to be discharged during that time frame. An additional amendment was made to the bill on paragraph C. There is a current paragraph C, that's just because all of the other paragraphs moved up. The proposed paragraph C was new language that was going to require written permission from all of the neighboring properties within 200 feet where the discharge of the fireworks was going to occur. That language was removed by the motion, so all of the paragraphs were moved up reflective of that removal. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions with regards to this bill? Go right ahead, sir.
I don't necessarily, I realize this when we amended this, but we did remove that language requiring our neighbors' consent. So now we've sort of got the same rules, we just shortened the time. My only concern was that if we accepted the arguments that, I can't remember the name, sorry.
Brenda Burdett.
Then you're back to the arguments of noise, danger, or sorry, noise, property damage, and debris. This doesn't really address any of those, other than just saying you can only do all of that on one day instead of 3. Yes.
You're on now? There we
Okay,
go.
I'm on that. Well, it does address debris. The new paragraph D does indicate that people that create the mess are still responsible by law to clean up their mess. It just does not give them authority to trespass to do that. In other words, to go into somebody else's backyard or something to do it, but they're still required to clean up after themselves.
I guess my concern is it feels like more prohibitive, and perhaps it's forthcoming as we grow. I don't know if it's necessary today, but it feels like that's where we're headed. We're kind of hoping another board will make that decision down the road so we don't have
To do what?
Well, the Mr. Campbell started with, I wasn't crazy about putting the onus for enforcement sort of back on the public, but the law as it was written, your proposed ordinance as it was written, that was an effective ban on fireworks. You got to get everybody's permission within 200 feet of you. That is an effective ban on fireworks. And since we've already had so many problems, I guess what I'm wondering is, for all these changes, will it have a practical?
Have an impractical effect. I'm not sure I understand.
Well, let me answer quick. I'm not sure that that this new bill, if it were to pass, would change what actually happens on the 4th of July or before. I feel that everybody's still going to go fireworks. They're going to start shooting them off from the day they sell until they finally run out of them. And I don't know as though it makes enforcement of it any easier. Just pointing out some observations, and I hate to do that because I feel like I'm complaining without offering any solution.
Well, it's kind of like saying, why should we put up speed limit signs? Because they're going to speed anyway.
No, I guess where I was going with this was, I'm wondering if a ban is not the way to go. So I guess what I'm sort of wondering out loud. It feels like over time, as we grow, as density grows, more neighborhoods come online. That's where every neighborhood of size ends up eventually, and we all get there for the same reason. At a certain point, you're dropping flaming material on top of somebody's home. It might not be a good idea. And I just said, we do have a lot of for incident.
To kind of address some of Alderman postage concerns. I guess I made 1, 2, 3. Initially, I made maybe 5 changes. Time of discharge or days of discharge. I think I shortened the times to be able to sell them. Then I had the one that you spoke of, the 200-foot thing. And then the last 2, D and E, which stood as they are. I got a lot of feedback from the public on, and I've got people, probably even in this room, that want to do away with fire. Obviously, Miss Padette was one. She was the one that brought it, just wanted fireworks just totally banned. And, but a lot of people said, we need to be able to shoot fireworks on July 4th. We need to celebrate Independence Day. Not so much on New Year's Eve, but I did get a few that felt like it was their right to shoot fireworks on New Year's Eve. Bottom line, Alderman Alder, as I took it, was not in favor of the 200-foot stipulation, I'll call it. And then a little after that, Alderman Gardner wanted to make his amendment. And I just feel like I acquiesced a little bit on that. I think I even made a statement prior to that that I wasn't going to give on that item, and I did. But anyway, for whatever that's worth. But the main thing to me is, and I've said this 2 or 3 times, and y'all probably getting tired of hearing it, but personally, I'm going to put something on Ozark Neighbors or Ozark Chit Chat or something like that on Facebook, a few weeks prior to New Year's Eve, and just kind of educate people on when they can shoot fireworks off. I will check with the city attorney to make sure I'm not doing anything out of line, but I'm sure we'll come to an agreement on what's legal.
We do that for the education piece every, before the 4th of July, it's sent out on the newsletter, it's sent out on Facebook, and it's the same thing that before, you're welcome to share.
So they'll know that. Well, if you do that, I'll just share it, and just educate the public best we can. Now, me personally, I don't want to ban fireworks. I mean, it's just a time to celebrate. And I'm not, the fireworks, even in the middle of the night, don't bother me. For 2 or 3 days, don't bother me. But I talked to so many people that's why I came up with what I came up with. That's all I can say.
Very fair, very fair. Any other comments from the board? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this bill? Hearing none, and there's no one on Zoom this evening, this bill will be held over to the next legislative session. Mr. Flores.
I'll move to replace Bill 3302 on its first reading by title. Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, seconded by Alderman Galloway to place bill number 3302 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
An ordinance approving the fee study establishing certain city fees.
Mr. Childers.
Just the city must go through a process and submit that information to the city attorney so that a bill can be established, which is this, and that establishes our fees. We go back through in each department and we evaluate all the costs associated with that fee. So that can be staff time, that can be overhead, that can be printing, copying, all those things that go into the cost of the fee, so that we can ensure that that's all we're charging for, not making additional funds on the permitting fees that we have, but just covering the costs that the city has on those. So this is the study and the data that goes into establishing the fees that the city has to charge to cover the cost of doing business. So if you have any specific questions per departments, we may have to ask the department head, but be happy to answer anything that I can. Ms. Calloway, I'm sure will answer as well.
Mr. Gardner.
I think one of the columns, I think, is mislabeled, but I just want to ask Ms. Payne on the Parks Department fees. The first two columns are current fees for member and non-member, and the next column is 2021 fees. Should that be 2022 fees? I'm not trying to nitpick, I just want to make sure. And this will probably draw a laugh into it. I'm not trying to be funny. I just think it's appropriate. On the licensing and vaccination of dogs, I just think it would be appropriate to use the term spayed or neutered instead of fixed. So
That can be done.
just comment.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions with regards to this bill from the board? I see lots of Post-it notes over there, so I'm just making sure that. You're good? All right. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on this bill this evening? No one? All right. If there is nothing further, this bill will be held over to the next legislative session. Mr. Campbell. Motion was made by Alderman Campbell, seconded by Alderman Poston to place bill number 3303 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Ozark, Missouri, chapter 210, animal regulations, section 210005, purpose and administration regarding transferring the administration of this chapter to the police department.
All right, Mr. Childers.
So I don't know if the board knows this or not, or anybody in the public knows this, but at the current time, our animal control services are provided by the Public Works Department. Ever since I've been here, that's really where they've resided, and that's been fine. But in most cases, and in what you'll see in most cities, is that canine officer is actually under the supervision of the police department. Now, for several reasons, it just makes sense to make that move right now. So the ordinance is being proposed to you to make those modifications that are necessary to allow for the police department or public safety department to carry out those functions, which are currently being controlled, currently being managed right now by the Public Works Department. You may also realize, or maybe we've discussed it, but at the current time, our public safety department does not have a canine unit. We used to have our own dogs that were police dogs, police animals that did certain functions. There are singular dogs, dual purpose dogs, different things, but we've kind of got a lot of canine things going on right now. And so as the chief and I have been looking at this, just trying to do the most efficient and effective management of all of this from a budgetary standpoint, from a manpower or employee resource standpoint, we're making sure that we do this all at once. So canine control officer, which is a job that we have currently posted, that will not be a commissioned officer, but it will be an employee that will be under the management of the police department, because that's where those services will now be held. Also, just one last point, you have police officers in a police department that deal with the canines that they control and that they manage. You also have a police department that works 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours around the clock. So it's just easier to staff that situation with people that are cross-trained in those things, rather than someone that you have to bring in from the outside in the case that a canine situation exists and have to pay overtime. So we're just finding a more efficient way to do that. So.
Does anybody have any questions on this bill?
Is this because right now we have a contract animal control, right? Is that?
No. You say contract?
Yeah.
Animal control is around the clock, 24/7. We just sort of respond, and we will continue to just respond. But no, we have a full-time employee that does animal
He's
control.
full-time now.
Uh-huh.
So this will still be a full-time.
Yeah, still a full-time employee, just under the public safety department rather than the public works department.
no change to how, I mean, to anything as far as the citizens are concerned.
No.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is it a different person then? Would it be a different person?
Different person than is currently now, yes. Yes.
Does that put that person out of work?
No, the public works employee, as public works, just like all the departments, continue to evolve. We certainly have many other duties that public works employee can currently take on. And so we have transferred their duties on, over to a different, department under public works. So no, it didn't put any jobs in jeopardy. Quite frankly, it's creating one in the police department that will serve a vital role in taking care of the animals. Giving us another canine expert also that since we are going to become the owner of 2 furry new pets in the police department. I'm sure some people probably won't look at them as furry little pets, but yeah, they will themselves be commissioned officers. So.
All right, Mr. Campbell.
So right now, the police department and the public works department are funded 2 different ways. They're not funded the same way, correct?
Correct.
Will that come in? And it's probably not a big budget item, so it's probably a moot point, but will there be revenue allotted to the police department and some taken away from the public works department, or is it just not enough?
No, it will be taken away from the police department. So basically, we have our general fund now, it's canine expense. It's a line item that's in there called canine expense. So as we were working between the public works director and the police chief, we just worked through those. What are those budgetary items? So you're really just transferring those funds over. But one of the things that we did talk about, again, this is where the efficiency comes in, knowing that we were going to bring back our canine units, making this move now, since we can cover a lot of those different kinds of expenses, like the food and the water and all of the training and things that go along with that, you can kind of, it's just a better budgetary way of managing that. So really, it's still the same line item, it just moves over from one department to the others. We're still in the general fund. So same fund. Yeah.
You mentioned non-commissioned officer. How does that work between the commissioned officers and this one being non-commissioned?
I'm gonna put this one on the chief of police. Let him explain the commission versus non-commissioned officer. So.
Yeah, so the canine control position that we currently have is a non-commissioned employee of the city. It will remain the exact same for us. They will be a non-commissioned civilian who assists and works with our officers on animal complaints, mainly canine control. So they won't be out arresting anyone or anything like that, but they do have some authority to issue citations and things like that based on violations that they see. The main benefit of this is really the channel of communications, because right now how it works, my officers 90% of the time are called directly for any type of canine issue that we have throughout the city. In turn, my officers then have to call a public works employee who comes out, and there's phone communication or whatever. By utilizing this, we can utilize all of our communication technology, whether it be through our records management system, through our computer-aided dispatch system, or through our radio system even, to really make that communication much more efficient. And then the entire scope of the responsibility of animal control now falls under the police department, rather than pieces of it fall under the police department and then pieces of it fall under the public works department. So it smooths that out, but it will be a non-commissioned employee who is responsible for those duties, similar to our other non-commissioned staff that has other responsibilities within the police department. Just to speak on one of the things that Steve talked about, one of the reasons why it's very important to do this is when we hire a non-commissioned, or when we hire any employee, that's a 40-hour-a-week job. Well, unfortunately, canine calls don't stop at 5 p.m. on weekdays, right? That also includes the care and maintenance of the facility, care of the animals that we may take in and things like that. When we have cross-trained canine officers, we then eliminate a majority of potential overtime and call outs and stuff like that we may have to do by only employing one canine control officer at the time. Whereas now Public Works, although they have one full-time employee who's responsible for that, they have multiple employees who are cross-trained who can come in and perform that function. So we're in essence kind of doing the same thing, only with staff that we already have right now, to make the most use of our allocated staffing and the funds that we have to facilitate our canine control responsibilities within the city.
Thank you for the explanation.
All right. Any other questions? Anybody in the audience here to speak on this bill? Hearing no more questions, this bill will be held over to the next legislative session. And again, Mr. Campbell.
Make a motion to place bill number 3304 as first reading by title. Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Campbell, seconded by Alderman Poston, to place bill number 3304 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a Show Me Zero program agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission.
All right, Mr. Childers. Going to defer back?
I'd be happy to, but I believe that Chief Arnold would be more appropriate.
All right.
So this is a grant for equipment. The Show Me Zero campaign is a statewide campaign to enhance driver safety throughout the state. It's for equipment, and so we had to propose exactly what we would utilize these grant funds, if selected for it, what we would utilize those on. One of our biggest needs are some of the more expensive equipment that go in our cars. And so what we chose to submit as part of our grant application was 3 new Stalker radar units. They're about a little less than 2,000. I think they're like 17 and some change, 1,700 and some change a piece, so a little over $5,000. As you all know, speed is one of the biggest factors to roadway safety there is. So by purchasing these new units under this grant, which is not a match grant or anything like that, we can replace some of the older equipment that we have in our cars that are failing, that we're spending money on to maintain, with new units, new warranties and things like that. The reason it comes before you is we can apply, we can research and things like that, but before we accept it, we must have board approval on that. So.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for the chief? None? Perfect explanation then. All right, is anyone here in the audience here to speak on this bill? Hearing none, this bill will be held over to the next legislative session. All right, Mr. Flores.
Move that we place bill 3305 on its first reading by title and description only.
All right, heard Mr. Gardner. Pardon me. All right, the motion was made by Alderman Flores, second by Alderman Gardner, to place bill number 3305 on its first reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Ozark, Missouri by adopting a new chapter, chapter 145, regarding the open records policy.
That's what I was going to assume. Ms. Callaway, go right ahead.
The state law of Missouri requires that each public governmental body provide a reasonable written policy related to Missouri Sunshine Law, also known as Chapter 610, that regulates open records by public bodies. This ordinance proposes to adopt Chapter 145, which will set forth such policy. One of the requirements in the law is that the policy has to be open for public review, so it is proposed by staff that this policy be adopted into our code, so it's available on the city's website for the public to see. I'll walk you through the bill and the proposed language. You will note that since it's a new chapter, none of the language is underlined or stricken because it's all new language. This ordinance is proposing to adopt just a policy related to essentially how citizens can be notified regarding an actual meeting or records that they can request, who they request them from, and then how they will be provided by the city. Outside of that, reference should be made to the actual sunshine law because it's amended from time to time by our state legislature. So it's not intended to be a verbatim copy of the sunshine law. This just governs how we are going to treat those requests and fulfill them legally. It establishes that the custodian of records will be our city clerk. She's already fulfilling this task. However, it is noted under that proposed section that any records requested between 610-100 to 610-126, which are specifically related to law enforcement records, will be delegated to the police department to handle those requests as a separate custodian of records. That's also a procedure that's common with municipalities due to the high volume of records requests that are made to police agencies. And it's a practice that we're currently doing now. How records are requested, you will note that at the end of the ordinance, there is a proposed form that's been updated and modified. We borrowed this from another local municipality. We felt it was a good form. The form will be provided on the city's website, or it can be provided on site. The response, the state law requires that the city provide a response within 3 business days, and that time frame begins once the clerk receives the request. So if the clerk is out of the office, the time would not begin until she receives the request upon returning. The request has to be filled within 3 days unless they provide notice of a reasonable delay, such as research, or maybe the number of records that are requested would require more work on the city's part, and they can take that time to ensure they fulfill the request. The fees for the records requests are included in one of the sections, and it just references back to the state law, and it identifies that for any research, the city will utilize the staff salary and benefits. That would be the lowest cost to the requester to provide those records. The ordinance does also set forth that all those records that may be closed shall be closed by the city. And that is under the sunshine law and also under any other federal or state law that allows closure. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's walked you through most of the language that's proposed.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Callaway? Mr. Campbell?
I just got one. And I don't see it in here, it may be in here, but is there any reason for us to put anything in there for retractions, like retracted names or retracted addresses or anything like that?
That would be covered under the closure that you're adopting pursuant to section 14560. So what that section proposes that anything in the about 27 applicable closure sections under the sunshine law that you are saying that as a board, you want the city to go ahead and redact that from the record. Anything else like a juvenile record or anything like that is already part of state law that can be closed or shall be closed. So that would also be applicable. So I believe that has been identified.
Does anyone else have anything for Ms. Callaway? Hearing none. Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on this bill this evening? Yes, sir. All right, if you'd come up to the podium, name, address to the clerk.
Kyle Estes, 5825 North 25th Street.
Go right ahead, sir.
So like the closed records now, like is that handled? Like, I mean, I feel like a lot of things get thrown in closed records, you know what I mean? Like, so if I sunshine request any closed records now, am I able to get them or not? Does this change that?
This law doesn't change anything related to closed records. The city is already following the allowed closed records under the Missouri Sunshine Law.
Right.
And this is just establishing the policy in another format.
So like, I mean, does it just kind of blanket anything like real estate questions or anything like that? I mean, are you able to close, am I able to sunshine request records pertaining to that kind of stuff now?
Citizen can request any records.
Right.
Whether they're actually going to be released by the city would be governed by the sections in 610. Chapter 610, section 21 establishes multiple subsections that give the city or any municipality the right to close certain records. So based on the nature of the request, the city would do an analysis, and then those portions of the record that are open would be released, and any portion that's closed under those sections would be redacted.
And then was there punishment established for city employees too? Is that something in there that I skimmed?
The proposed law does establish a requirement that the city employees follow the policy, and if they fail to follow the policy, that there would be a mechanism for some sort of action.
Punishment against like whistleblowers or something like that. Just seems, yeah, that was my only question. Just kind of seems against transparency, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because like anything that pertains to taxpayer dollars or anything, we should be able to sunshine requests. And so this kind of leaves it where it's ambiguous up to the city whether they want you to know it or not, you know, so that's my only opinion about it. Yes, Rick.
Mr. Gardner.
I'd like to press that.
I'm not real sure where you're going with that, Kyle, but if you've got a concern that we are not being transparent,
I just feel like it allows more opportunity to not be transparent. And I feel like the whole goal that's been preached is transparency here as of late.
well, so you're saying something about this new policy creates the ability for us to not be as transparent as you would like?
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the punishment of employees against whistleblowers, that seems kind of crazy to me too, but that's just me.
I'm sorry, you said that so fast, I really didn't understand you. What about whistleblowers?
This adds punishment against whistleblowers, city employees that violate this policy or whatever. So it seems like it's against whistleblowers. I don't know. It just seems just kind of rubbing me the wrong way.
It seems to me like it would be a punishment for somebody that drug their feet to not get you the information that you wanted, not a whistleblower. But I don't know. I would like for you to.
Not how it's worded.
I don't want Mr. Estes to walk out of here feeling that we're hiding something from him.
I
Because I don't
can
think
answer.
we are.
I can answer the question.
Please do.
So the way that the Missouri Sunshine Law is structured presently, under chapter 610.21, it has about 28 subsections that list legal advice, discussions related to real estate, if there's a negotiation involved, employee personnel records about hiring, firing, and disciplining. There are very specific exceptions that apply to how a municipality or another public governmental agency can close those records.
These are statewide requirements.
They
huh?
are.
Okay.
There's also very clear state law that says they have a policy towards transparency. And so generally, if you ever have a situation where something doesn't quite fit under one of those exceptions, and it could be open or closed, the policy for transparency wins. And therefore, the advice is that you release that document. However, what this policy is proposing is nothing different than the state law or what we're currently following. It just affirms that we are going to follow the state law. And it actually puts in place protections for employees for following that law, specifically your city clerk, who's your custodian of record.
Okay. Well, I would like to make a request of you, Kyle. If at any point you feel you're being stonewalled or mistreated or things are being misrepresented, instead of using Facebook or something, would you please come to me or one of the alderpersons and say, I want to know what's going on here. And I will commit to you to get you whatever answer we can. Right. Give us a chance before we rat out the city, you know, on some sort of social media.
Are you scared?
No, I'm not scared.
That answers my question. Thanks. But it's still.
I wouldn't be sitting here if I was scared.
The whistleblower thing, you said protections on employees that follow it, but there's punishment on employees that don't, right?
The law requires that the city have a policy.
Right.
There's no requirement that it be adopted into the city code. To be extremely transparent, the city is adopting it into the code, which puts everyone on notice that this conversation was happening tonight related to this bill. And that purpose of that law is to protect employees. It says it in the Missouri Sunshine Law. This whole purpose of this law is to protect the employees for following the policy. The requirement not to disclose records that are closed by the city is nothing different than what is already being practiced. If somebody improperly discloses some information that should be closed, a closed record by the city, the same penalties may be provided. It's not a whistleblower issue.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. That takes care of it. I appreciate it.
All right. Anything else?
Good. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. Anyone else here this evening to speak on this bill? Hearing none, this bill will be held over to the next legislative session. Second reading of bills, Mr. Flores.
Move to place bill 3299 on second reading by title, description only.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, second by Alderman Gardner to place bill number 3299 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance amending the zoning code in official map by changing the zoning classification of certain property located at 1752 South 16th Avenue.
All right. Does anybody have any questions with regards to this bill? Comments, concerns? None? It's good.
I move that we adopt bill 3299 as ordinance 21-083.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, number 3299 is ordinance number 21-083. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway. Alderman Alder. Alderman Poston. Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Gardner. We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Right, Alderman Flores.
Move that replace bill 3300 on its second reading by title and description.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, second by Alderman Campbell to place bill number 3300 on its second reading by title and description only. All those in favor?
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of a conditional use permit for property located at 6100 North Cabinet Drive.
Any questions, comments, concerns regarding this bill? None? Tell you what, staff's doing a fantastic job getting everything ready. All right, Mr. Flores.
I move that we adopt bill 3300 as ordinance 21-084.
Motion was made by Alderman Flores, second by Alderman Campbell to adopt bill number 3300 as ordinance number 21-084. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Gardner. Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway. Alderman Alder. Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Poston. We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
All right, wonderful. Report of officers, boards, and committees. Mr. Childers?
Then, as Mr. Williams said, the 14 is one of these. It's the 14. We still have the legislative session on.
Yes, forgot how to use your
Well,
microphones.
we had a thing that, we sort of had talked, we want to have, a student meeting with the things that we want to get planned for presentation for the solution to the community, so that's really why we're trying to do it. The solution, so, thanks for coming, so that we can certainly make it relevant to the agenda item about the OC as well. I'll be there for about that. I don't know if we have to.
Sure, and I think if you guys have your available schedule for that day, we may just go ahead and do it. I think we've got plenty of things to discuss. It'd be nice to kind of work through those and get your guys' feedback. Yes, it is.
Starting this week and then looking into next week as well. First draft done.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Miscellaneous comments, announcements, board members. Nothing? Looks like we October 12th, non-legislative work session, 8:30 at the OC. October 14th, State of the Community.
Oh, yeah.
Or Salute to the Community.
That's at 6.
6. And then the 18th potentially for a secondary non-legislative work session.
18?
Is it?
21st would be another possible.
Yeah, nothing.
Okay. The clerk will send it out to you to double check your schedule. We could stumble through the calendar here that I don't have in front of me. Mr. Gardner, do you have something?
Yes, I just want to say how much I appreciate the explanation sheets on the bills. You made a comment about how prepared the staff is. You know, that hasn't always been done. I know it's been done for a year or so, but that really helps, those explanation sheets. If there's any question at all, or if somebody misses a meeting, that's the first thing I go to, is just to refresh my memory, and I appreciate those very much.
Well,
So-
if I may, I'm gonna give that.
I looked at
kudos
her.
To our city attorney, because she really, Amanda really put that out there and said this is something that I think will benefit, and it has greatly.
Oh,
And
man.
she stays on us to get it done. I'm not gonna kid you, we don't always do a good job. She stays on us because she works very closely with our city clerk to get that package put together, and it's very timely, so thank
Yeah.
you for recognizing that.
Any other comments from the board? We have a real estate closed session,
Closed session, yeah.
right on. I'll entertain a motion to go to closed session for real estate matters. Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Flores to adjourn our regular session and move to closed session for matters of real estate. May I get a roll call vote, please?
Alderman Alder. Aye. Alderman Campbell.
Aye.
Alderman Flores.
Alderman Galloway. Alderman Gardner.
Aye.
Alderman Poston. We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
opportunity for council comments.
I got one real quick.
I'll go right ahead.
You know, we later, Ted Smith for the rest of the day, and I know Ted was moving, but he's a good guy, and he did a lot for the city. So I think he kind of, at least in my mind, kind of laid away out, kind of like part of the path around how to make decisions to the best interest of the city, keep your focus solely on the city, not the sheriff. He's around, and I'm gonna miss him a lot.
Absolutely.
I know at the end of the meeting, we just have a minute of silence for him.
Very good. You know, I had the pleasure of sitting next to Ted for 2 years, right over there. And Ted and I bantered back and forth, Army and Air Force, enlisted and officer quite frequently. But the most fun I ever had was getting to sit next to him. And during the meeting, I would reach over in his chair and I would lower him down. And there's no way to get back up without making a scene, but he never put up a fight, but quite often, because I'm a tall guy. I like to be the tallest in the room, and Ted was taller than me, so I had to lower him down sometimes. He never made a scene, but always in good fun. He'll be missed.
When I became an alderman, he would keep showing me what to do, and he'd always smile at me, you got it.
When I was mayor, he told me, which I would do, I get something out of order, or I get some first or second reading. That's the limit. I've been having several of you probably gotten these, but since Ted's left, he's watched every single one of these meetings. Texts me pretty often when he doesn't like something that I or somebody else said.
Yeah, but a couple of times when Ted and I had strong disagreement on policy issues. And at the end of it, he would either say or text, "Good job." There wasn't any time that he didn't.
I saw Rachel at the presentation, this daughter was great, and I thank her for allowing us to be in her. Was quite a cheer up. He was with that graduation. Zoom calls. On wrestlings. She could walk back and I could. Can't get her.
Definitely be missed. All right. Well, everyone, been a great evening. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion was made by Alderman Galloway, seconded by Alderman Alder to adjourn this legislative session